This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is our full LG G4 review. We did a very in-depth first look review, and now we're ready with value judgments after lots of testings, taking benchmarks, and we've got two versions here. We have the international Korean model and the T-Mobile US model, so you can see the different finishes too. We have the faux metal back, we have the leather back. We're going to look at them now. So this is it, the LG G4. If you like the LG G3, well, this one's going to impress you even more. It certainly did impress us more. First off, lovely, brighter, more color-saturated display compared to the LG G3. And it's not Super AMOLED. It's, you know, if you're going to compare that to the Samsung Galaxy S6, which we did in a different video, yes, it's not quite as saturated. It doesn't get quite as bright. But still, it's very color accurate. It's a bit more natural than Super AMOLED, and in no way does it disappoint me. This is a QHD resolution display, 2560 by 1440, so plenty of pixels coming at you here. You know, we got this model in first. Obviously, we have two. We have another one here. We'll take a look at it in a minute. And this is the T-Mobile US model. This is their particular color of leather. They say they have the exclusive on this, but this will be available with your choice of 4 different leather backs that may vary by carrier and country. Or there's the faux metal plastic back or a ceramic back, which we don't have in-house. But anyway, first model I saw is this one. And as you might guess, I mean, this, even if leather isn't your thing, this is just a nice looking phone, isn't it? It just makes it look elegant. The curve looks pretty cool. The contrasting of the color right there. All very attractive stuff. I'm kind of glad we got this in first because we could see the phone at the best it could be. And these days, looks are obviously very important. Look at Samsung doing a whole redesign of the Galaxy line just to make the phones more attractive and high quality. How about the faux back? This is not going to fool anybody into thinking it's metal. It's an interesting surface texture, and it's not the same super shiny plasticky finish that gets gummy like we saw on some LG phones of old. It's certainly interesting. On both of these, the back is removable, so yes, you could even mix and match backs. And let's yank the back off of this guy. This is the international model, actually this Korean version of the phone, but it plays well internationally, works on our US networks. So you rip off the back, like so. First good thing, you can do this. Gee, it seems like fewer and fewer phones actually have removable backs with removable batteries, storage card slots, all that sort of good thing. SIM card slot stacked with the micro SD card slot, which would go on top right there. 3,000 milliamp removable battery. So good times for those of you who like to be able to swap in batteries in the field rather than carrying around external battery packs to charge up if you need to. Inside we have a Qualcomm Snapdragon 1.8 gigahertz CPU. That's the Snapdragon 808 clocked at 1.8 gigahertz. Hexa-core CPU, that means 6 cores. Once again, we have a mix of high and low power cores depending on what the phone is doing. If it's doing something demanding, it'll use high power cores. If it's doing something not so demanding, it'll use the low power cores. The idea is to save you, well, battery life. 64-bit CPU, 3 gigs of RAM in our phone, 32 gigs of storage, and obviously we have expandable storage here. Good times on that. The phone has the usual dual-band Wi-Fi 802.11 AC. It has Bluetooth. It has NFC. It has a GPS. It has just about everything but the kitchen sink, as is the way with phones these days. And we have an IR blaster for AV remote control as well, with LG's own solution for that. Up front, 8 megapixel camera for you selfie fans on the back. Something LG's made a big deal of, and we're enjoying it quite well. 16 megapixel camera. It's a new sensor in there. It's a larger than average sensor for a smartphone, bigger than the Galaxy S6's by a little bit. You know that was important to LG to do. We have our LED flash right there. Laser autofocus, once again, we saw that in the LG G3, and certainly it does make for fast focus times. This guy has optical image stabilization. What does that mean? That means if your hand is shaky, your picture won't be blurry, or your video won't be jumping around. If you're in a moving car or a train or something like that, this will not help you if you have jumpy children, you're trying to shoot football, anything like that. It's not for your subject moving, it's for you and the phone moving. While we're looking at the back of the phone, LG likes to put the buttons on the back. The idea is when you're using it, your fingers fall just so, and fairly ergonomically. It's not a bad thing. It'll take some getting used to if you're used to all the other phones on the market that have side controls, but it works for me. And because LG has all sorts of gestures and different things, including knock on, notice I didn't have to use that power button ever. You can actually do that for turning it off as well. So you don't even have to worry about the power button. Nice. On the bottom, the usual 3.5 millimeter audio jack, and we have the micro USB connector right there. Surprisingly, it does not support Qualcomm Quick Charge 2.0, however. Well, we're speaking of displays and viewing angles. We have a lot of competing phones right here. Galaxy S6, we have the Nexus 6, we have the HTC One M9, we have our LG right here. All are set to 66% brightness. Why aren't we driving it at 100%? Because the displays are so bright, it actually messes with the video brightness levels. So there you have it. We don't want the background to look too dim for you folks. Anyway, you can see the viewing angles on the HTC and the LG aren't quite as good as the Samsung and the Nexus. Super AMOLED still has some advantages there. The one thing I will tell you is that the camera accentuates it more than real life. It's not quite as dim as you might think. But while we've got our other friends out here to compare, size-wise, 5.5 inches, the thing that LG did with the G3 and they continue to do with the G4 is to make it relatively small and thin. So it might be verging on phablet size, you could even call it a phablet, but it is just not that hard to hold and not that huge. And it tapers too, and in a comfortable way. It curves, so as you can see, it's actually fattest at the bottom. It also has a curve here. Not as much as the LG G Flex or G Flex 2, but there's a little bit of the banana going on here with the curve. Makes it more comfy to hold, comfier against your face. Anyway, comparing it size-wise, we have the Samsung Galaxy S6 next to it. So not a horrible difference in size, right? Considering that you go from 5.1 inches on your Galaxy to 5.5 inches on the LG. So for those of you who say, big display, give me as much as I can possibly carry, obviously this is pretty darn portable. It's certainly a lot smaller than the iPhone 6 Plus, which is relatively huge given its display size. Next, we have the HTC One M9. Smaller screen size, but not much difference in size overall. And they're both, you know, fairly slim phones. You look at them from the side as well. So not much of a size penalty still. Now, how about the Nexus 6, which really Motorola did a good job with the Nexus 6 of making it fairly small for a 6-inch phone. This is the size, screen size of your low-end Kindle. It's pretty amazing. Obviously, the LG is still going to be smaller. It would be a miracle if it wasn't. You can see the difference there. Now, the Nexus is quite a bit heavier. That's the thing that I notice most. And it has a taper, but not as much. See, it's wider, too. So palm-wise, notice the difference there? Width matters a lot in the palm. If it exceeds the width of your palm, it just ain't going to be comfy. So it makes the LG a lot easier to hold in hand like that. I have no problems. Now, granted, I have fairly large hands. I'm a quite tall woman, but this is comfy. I can just hold this all day long and enjoy it. Now, how about durability-wise? Well, the Nexus 6 is genuine polycarbonate plastic. Nice-looking phone and all that, but it is. So much as we might pick on plastic and much as people might like more pretty high-end materials, you know, it's durable enough. The LG underneath this leather, or if you get the faux metal plastic back, obviously, even the ceramic back, underneath the coating there, it's your usual polycarbonate plastic. So that makes it pretty, you know, durable if you do that. Front face, not so much, obviously. That's still going to be glass. Samsung Galaxy S6, glass, beautiful glass and aluminum, glass front and back. Most delicate one you want to take the most care of. The HTC One M9, well, that one is metal all around, metal unibody, so other than the possibility of scratching it, which so far has not been easy to do, I haven't scratched this thing, this guy is also going to be pretty durable. Being metal, aluminum, you know, it may dent if you drop it, whereas plastic tends to just kind of deform and then return back to shape. So how about performance? We have Lollipop Android 5.1 on here with LG's UI on top of it. LG's UI is still a little heavy. That's my feeling on things. And it could certainly impact performance, but it's gotten a lot more lightweight than it has been before. Generally speaking, speeds are fine on it. Android phones, every once in a while, do a little lag when you're just running around the UI. This one certainly isn't too bad. And keep in mind that we at Mobile Tech Review and every other reviewer right now at the beginning of May, we have pre-release phones, and these are very late firmware, pretty close to release. So things should be pretty much as they will be when they're released, but it could be tweaked, could be even a bit better. In terms of benchmarks, we're now using the international version. Since the T-Mobile one had benchmarking mostly blocked on it, you can see here on Tutu we scored 46,043. Very respectable number. On Quadrant, the phone scored 23,730. 3D Mark, Ice Storm Unlimited test is scored 18,600. Sun Spider, JavaScript benchmark 760. For those of you who watched our first look video, yes, indeed, the 3D Mark number did go up a little bit with the latest firmware on our international model. So, nice that. So how are those numbers compared to other phones that are available on the market today? Well, it sits, not surprisingly, between the Snapdragon 805 that was in last year's flagships and the new 810 that's used in the LG G Flex 2 and the HTC One M9. One nice thing about the Snapdragon 808 with Adreno 418 graphics is less heat. Now, a lot was made of how the HTC One M9 got kind of toasty and the LG G Flex got warm. For us, neither of those got burning hot, but they could get noticeably warm. This one just stays like a cool cucumber. I was playing Real Racing 3 on this guy for half an hour, and it never got uncomfortable to hold. So how about software? We're going to use the US model for this, obviously, because it has, well, applications more representative of what we'll get in the US. And I don't want to repeat myself too much. A lot of you probably watched our LG G4 in-depth first look. We have LG UI here. They still do things like, well, they customize the icons. I get always cranky when manufacturers mess with the icons because I don't think they ever do as good a job as Google and the application makers do of making icons. Their settings have definitely calmed down. We have quick settings right there, which is handy. I like quick settings. Yes, I do. And here we have the linear view. It starts out in 4-tab view, which I think is so 2013, but you can put it right back to this. And you can see we got the white background, basic colors. It sticks pretty well to material design, which is what the UI theme and customization is called inside of Lollipop. It doesn't really mess too much with the speed of the phone. So all in all, I'm not going to complain. And we still have LG's multitasking right here, which I demoed in our first look. If you see a little kind of like the hamburger symbol here on there, it means you can open something up in 2 windows, and we select the second window and it'll open up. So you'll have a split screen between 2 applications right there. The usual set of gestures that LG has, including gestures for taking pictures selfie-wise, the knock on, knock off, all of that is good stuff in terms of LG customization. If you really don't like LG UI, of course, you can just put a third-party launcher like Nova Launcher on. It's real easy. Just go to Google Play and pick your launcher of choice, give it a test, see if you like it or not. Now, here's one thing I know a lot of you have been really interested in because LG has marketed the hell out of their camera being very impressive. 16 megapixel rear camera, optical image stabilization. We have a color fidelity engine in here, which tries to get the white balance right. So no more, your whites kind of like yellow or they look magenta or whatever. We have the laser autofocus, which is indeed quick for focus, but quicker than any other phone on the market. And we have 3 different ways of looking at the camera UI. This is the full manual mode that we've got going right here. And now you got white balance, manual focus control, EV control, ISO, your shutter speed. You cannot change the aperture on this, but it's a fast f1.8 lens. That's about the fastest lens you're going to find on a camera phone right now. That would be the speed on your average 50 millimeter SLR lens. So not bad. Switch between photo and video right there, front and back cameras, more settings, pretty capable. A lot of information there for you advanced shooters. And we're going to show you some sample photos that we took, including one macro shot that I did of a rose or near macro where I actually got some bokeh background blur, and I was using all the manual settings to do that because I'm, we review cameras too. I'm quite the camera enthusiast. Say you want to be just simple. It's something called simple right there. So for the I just want to, take a picture. You tap, you focus, you take a picture. And then there's basic, which is the in-between one. You got your flash control, you got obviously on-screen handy things for switching front and back camera. You have remotes, you can choose your panorama right there. Front and back camera simultaneous, and you have dedicated buttons for camera versus video. This is the default setting. I think this is the one that most people are going to use. So how are the pictures? The pictures that this takes are quite good. It's still a camera phone, folks. It's still got a tiny little lens there. It might be a nice f1.8 lens on it. The sensor on this is much smaller than digital SLRs. Even, you're talking micro four thirds, any of those things that people are going to be using for serious photography, within the limits of the fact that this is still a camera phone. It is very, very good. Occasionally I saw some challenges it had with scenes that had a lot of bright sunshine, pools of sunshine with some shadows, that sort of thing. Those baffle camera phones. They can even baffle any camera. Sometimes Samsung actually did a better job, though, of handling that kind of severe dynamic range. Colors are very good, and the fidelity is good. That's one thing I would say. It does a little bit better than Samsung. That color fidelity engine works. When we took a picture of the same rows, the Samsung went towards the magenta. This guy actually got it right, more towards the warmer pink and not the cooler magenta pink. 4K video recording, quite good. Not much different in my mind from previous generation in terms of that, and the optical image stabilization really helps. So let's take a look at some sample photos, and you can see also the camera. Lollipop allows you to shoot RAW. This is not an LG thing, but not all manufacturers are exposing that capability. For those of you who are photo fanatics, you know what RAW is. It's not processed by the JPEG engine. When you see the RAW files on this, you're probably going to say, I'm just going to go with JPEG. Anyway, they require so much correction. It's really impressive what the JPEG engine is doing here. Magenta and yellow color casts on things. Certainly, a little sharpening helps, a little noise reduction helps. Often the camera would either under or overexpose in the JPEG engine correct for that. It would take, particularly for the chromatic aberration, the color artifacting, it would take so much work to correct the RAW file at times, it depends on what you're shooting, that it probably isn't worth the effort. I did shoot a couple of photos of a rose that were awesome, but then other things that seem pretty simple, like you'll see the picture of the patio with the yellow bucket, the Coke can, and the pebbles, just so you can see how it shoots detail there. That one, it surprisingly it had a hard time in the RAW file and had to do a lot of JPEG processing. So yes, it's a very good camera. Yes, it's one of the best camera phones on the market. Beats the pants off the iPhone 6. Is it head and shoulders above the Samsung Galaxy S6 camera, which is also 16 megapixels? Not so much, but yeah, a little bit. The lens is f1.8 versus f1.9. That's a very small difference right there. Bigger sensor on here can help with low light, although sometimes Samsung software correction was a little bit better for some low light settings. How about battery life? Now, this is something some of you were surprised at or took issue with when we had our Samsung Galaxy S6 versus LG G4 Smackdown, when we said that the Galaxy S6 had better battery life. Let me qualify that. Let me explain that a little bit before you guys go all crazy on me. International version, T-Mobile version, both have that 3,000 milliamp battery in there. Usually with an international version, if anything, we'll see lesser battery life because particularly the cellular radios are not tuned for this country's network. Although these days, with globalization of cell radios, there's less and less of a difference. For some reason, and of course these are running slightly different firmware too, and this is actually our second international unit that LG sent us, going through different firmware versions, but still, for some reason, the T-Mobile US version, and this isn't a reflection on T-Mobile as a carrier particularly, but more like the US model, at least the US GSM model, this one has shorter battery life than the international model. Now, which is the real Waldo? I can't tell you. I'm sorry, folks. We're going to have to wait for the beginning of June when these start shipping en masse in the US, and we can test them on all carriers again. Our T-Mobile model, generally 4.5 hours of screen on time, sometimes even just 4, and that's with brightness set at 50%, so we're not cranking things up, going high or anything like that, and that's That's average use. I'm not doing crazy things with it. I'm not playing Dead Trigger 2 for 4 hours. It's the usual things you would do. Surfing the web, making some phone calls, checking your email, doing social networking, taking some photos, taking some videos, you know, the normal stuff. No GPSing particularly in there, no heavy-duty 3D gaming in there. Our international model, however, had no problem hitting 5 hours of actual screen on time. Going up to 5.5, a little bit better sometimes. You know, each battery run can be a little bit different. So easily meeting and then surpassing the Galaxy S6 by a little bit. So there you have it. That's the LG G4, again, coming to US carriers at the beginning of June from what we hear. Certainly LG's finest Android smartphone yet. A lot to love here. The big display, but the manageable size, the stylish curve to it. I like that a lot. It's also ergonomic, so it's practical. The leather backs, well, me personally, I think that's just to die for. It really jazzes up the phone a whole lot better than the faux plastic back. The phone is fast, and if you watched our first look review, you saw us playing games on it, and it keeps up just fine. The benchmarks are respectable. They may not be as fast as the very fastest phone, but close enough, very high. It's really hard to find anything that you can do that really overtaxes these CPUs these days in these Android smartphones. They're all so darn fast. Overall, I would definitely recommend it. So that's the LG G4, undeniably one of the nicest Android phones we've seen so far in 2015. Okay, hey, the year is still young. It's just barely May, but still, we have a big 5.5-inch display and a very stylish casing, particularly if you go for the metal, probably the ceramic too. High resolution, very good color accuracy, nice color saturation, fast performance, doesn't get too hot on the back either. Really good camera. Hey, it's a great phone. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Don't forget to visit our website for the full written review and subscribe to our YouTube channel.